Good evening. My name is Marko Dutka. I'm here tonight with the Photographer Academy and I'm going to be giving you some tips about how to take nighttime photographs. I've got a particular kind of equipment here. I'm going to quickly run through just to show you what I actually use. First of all, what I've got here is a Canon 5D Mark III. On that we've also got a 17 to 14mm lens. I've got it on a bembo tripod, which is incredibly useful for the type of photography that I'll be doing tonight. And then I also have a Photix remote timer as well. And one of the most important items is this torch of mine here, which helps me to get around the actual cemetery and which will also help me in terms of actually taking the photographs, which I'll show you later on. With most tripods, you've got the three legs obviously, but they are quite static. With the bembo, I can move these around and it gives me a considerable amount of flexibility. So I can get into very awkward positions, very awkward spaces by just using the bembo in a way that I couldn't do with a normal tripod. It's very, very flexible. And as you'll see later on when we're taking the photographs, I have to kind of get into very awkward spaces to be able to get those pictures. That's the basis of the actual camera equipment, but I want to go into a little bit more detail about the camera itself and how I actually set it up. Strangely enough, even though we're actually working in very low light conditions, I'm actually still going to be working at very low ISOs. So I'm going to be working at 100 ISO, 200 ISO, 400 ISO at very, very most, because I want to keep the actual pictures free of artifact. I want to keep them free of noise. I want to keep them free of pixelation. Even with a fantastic camera like this, which actually has noise reduction built into it, I will still get that, and especially so when I'm going to be printing these very, very large. So what I do is I will take my first primary photographs at 100,000 ISO, and that's just to test the actual ground, to see if I've got the exposure, to make sure that I can see the back of the screen and I can see exactly what's happening. But when I'm actually going to be taking the photograph, I want that low ISO to give me the quality of the final image in the same way that I would do if I was photographing in daylight. The lens itself is actually on manual focus. I'm doing that because I want to be very specific about where I actually focus. Obviously, we're in very low light conditions here, so the camera wouldn't be able to autofocus in these kind of conditions. But it also means that I can be very specific about what I actually focus on, and that's actually a very, very important part of what I'm photographing in these nighttime photographs. Obviously, when I'm photographing this, it's pitch black for most of the time. A lot of the places that I'm photographing, there's very, very low light levels. So it's incredibly difficult to kind of figure out exactly what you want to photograph. So the first thing that I will do is I will always visit a location well in advance in daylight. I'll walk around there, I'll look for all the kinds of things that I think are going to be interesting in my subject matter. I'll look for details. I'll obviously look for hazards because I don't want to be tripping up and breaking my leg in the middle of nowhere. And I want to make sure that I'm just very well sorted out beforehand and know exactly what I'm going to be photographing. Once I started doing this, I became very used to kind of looking out and beginning to kind of realise and imagine what it would be like at night time. So now I compose my pictures during the daytime, as it were, when I'm scouting, and then I fine-tune when I actually get there at night. Even so, it is a dramatically different environment at night, and what I anticipated isn't always exactly the same. Sometimes for worse, but mostly for better. It actually becomes even more magical, in a certain sense, an eerie location to photograph, and that's actually part of what I want in my images. So there's still lots of room for imagination. One of the other things that I've got with me as well is a torch. It's a very, very powerful torch. I always have lots and lots of batteries just in case, and it's helped me get around. When you'll see with some of the other pictures that I'm taking later on, you'll see that actually it's quite hazardous walking around some of the areas that I photograph. So the torch is very, very useful for that. But it's also an intrinsic part of what I'm actually using to photograph the subject matter. It helps me to actually focus my camera, and that's probably one of its main uses. Just one last little thing as well. I photograph throughout the year. So I can be photographing on balmy, beautiful evenings in the summertime. I can also be photographing in the middle of January and February. So if you are going to go into nighttime photography, make sure you have lots and lots and lots of warm clothing with you, because it gets very cold out there.